The door didn't creak. That was the first thing Ray's Calder noticed. Someone had oiled the hinges. He kept his eyes shut, breathing slow, controlled, the kind of stillness that took years of violence to learn. Outside, rain tapped against the safe house windows like it was trying to get someone's attention. The nightstand beside him held three things: a loaded Glock, a burner phone, and enough bundled cash to buy silence from half the city. Ray's had been lying on that bed for 40 minutes. Not sleeping, waiting. His team had confirmed the breach 20 minutes earlier. Someone bypassed the East Corridor camera, moved through the service entrance, triggered the weight sensor near the back hallway. No alarm had gone off, because Ray's told them not to. He wanted to see what walked through that door himself. His ears caught it first. Small footsteps, soft soles, uneven weight distribution like someone being careful, not trained. His alpha instincts lit up the way they always did before something important happened. Not threat recognition. Something else. Something he couldn't name yet. The footsteps stopped at the foot of the bed. Ray's kept breathing. Slow. Even. Then a small shadow fell across his chest. He didn't open his eyes. A child. The scent hit him a half-second later. Lavender soap. Pencil shavings. Something warm underneath it all. Familiar in a way that made his jaw tighten. The child didn't speak. Ray's listened for breathing. Shallow. Slightly fast. Nervous, maybe. But the boy didn't move away. Didn't run. Just stood there at the bedside in the amber lamp glow like he had every right to be in the room. Then the child moved forward. One step. Then another. A small gloved hand pressed flat against Ray's chest. Right over his heart. The yellow rubber gloves were 3 sizes too big. Ray's could feel the loose material even through his shirt. The pressure held for 3 full seconds. Deliberate. Careful. Like the boy was checking something. Ray's didn't move. The hand lifted. Then came the sound of paper. A notebook. Pages turning. A pen clicking open. Ray's tracked every sound. A soft scratch of writing. Then silence. Something landed on his chest. Light. Flat. A folded piece of paper. The child stepped back. Ray's waited 4 seconds before he opened one eye just wide enough to read. The handwriting was neat. Small letters. Pressed hard into the page like the writer wanted to make absolutely sure the words stayed. Mama said you might pretend to sleep. Ray's pulse spiked so fast his hand almost moved toward the Glock on reflex. He caught himself. Breathed. Held the stillness like a man gripping a live wire. Mama. That one word hit harder than any bullet he'd ever taken. Because no one knew about this safe house. Not the Calder Syndicate lieutenants. Not his brothers. Not the dozen men stationed outside. This location had been kept clean for 6 months. Yet here stood a child. In yellow rubber gloves. Who knew exactly what Ray's was doing. Hi viewers. Have you ever had a moment where a single word from a child completely stopped you cold? Drop it in the comments right now. I read every single one. The boy hadn't moved. Ray's studied him from behind barely open lids. Small frame. Maybe 4.5 feet tall. Couldn't be older than 5. Hair cut close on the sides. Dark eyes that didn't blink nearly as often as they should. And the way he stood, weight balanced, spine straight, was all wrong for a 5-year-old. That wasn't how scared children stood. That was how prepared children stood. Ray's shifted slightly on the bed. Testing. The boy's eyes tracked the movement immediately. Not startled. Watching. Like he'd been studying the alpha the entire time and was simply recording new data. Ray's let 3 more seconds pass. Then the child reached into the front pocket of his small hoodie and pulled out something else. Another piece of paper. He unfolded it slowly. Read it once himself. Then held it forward. Ray's opened both eyes. The boy didn't flinch. Didn't step back. He just held the paper steady in those oversized yellow gloves. Arm extended. Like he was offering something important. Ray's sat up halfway and took the paper. For words this time. Are you my papa? The rain outside got louder. Ray's throat locked. He looked up from the paper. The boy was still watching him. And for the first time, Reyes saw something in those dark eyes that made the whole room feel smaller. Recognition, not fear, not curiosity. Recognition, like the child already knew the answer and was simply giving the alpha a chance to say it first. Reyes opened his mouth, then stopped, because the boy tilted his head slightly to the left. And Reyes had seen that exact movement before. On someone he hadn't seen in 5 years. 3 names ran the eastern seaboard. Reyes, Zion, Kaysen, the Calder triplets. People in the streets didn't say their full names out loud. Not in restaurants, not in cars, not on phones they thought were clean. You said the Calders the same way you said a weather warning. Flat, careful, with the quiet understanding that what came next was going to cost somebody something. The Calder Syndicate had started as a port operation. Cargo inspection bypasses, customs manipulation, pharmaceutical redistribution on a scale that made federal investigators lose sleep. By the time the brothers were 24, they'd expanded into casino finance, political consulting, and weapons routing across 4 states. Zion was the strategist, cold math, long games, the kind of thinker who could predict how a room would collapse before anyone else felt the floor shake. Kaysen was the enforcer, all forward pressure and controlled fury. He didn't negotiate. He walked into rooms and people made decisions faster than they planned to. And Reyes was different. His brothers called him the engine, not because he was louder or faster, because everything they built ran through him. He made the calls that kept the machine alive. He was the one rivals called when they wanted to talk instead of bleed. He was the one prosecutors couldn't get close to because every move he made was 3 steps removed from the thing they were actually trying to pin. Cold, strategic, untouchable. But one thing about Reyes separated him from his brothers in a way nobody on the outside understood. He had never taken an Omega partner. Not publicly, not privately, not even in the loose, casual way powerful alphas sometimes did when they wanted warmth without obligation. His brothers had both bonded years ago. Zion's Omega was sharp-tongued and brilliant, ran 3 legitimate real estate fronts and kept Zion accountable in ways no soldier ever could. Kaysen's partner had grown up rough and matched his intensity like they were cut from the same steel. But Reyes stayed alone. His lieutenants assumed it was a power choice, that he kept himself unbonded on purpose so no one could use a partner against him. That made sense. That fit the man they knew. What they didn't know was the truth. The truth was a name. Oren Solis. Oren couldn't speak. Mute since early childhood, not from trauma, but from a condition that simply never corrected itself. He communicated through writing, through sign language, and occasionally through the kind of silence that somehow said more than other people managed with a full sentence. They met during a syndicate event nearly 6 years ago. A closed-door corporate gathering at a mid-city luxury hotel. The kind where attendance itself was a statement of loyalty. Oren was on the event staff that night. Not security. Not management. He was working quietly in the background, moving with the practiced invisibility that service workers develop when they spend years around people who don't look at them. Reyes had looked. He wasn't sure why at first. Oren wasn't loud. Wasn't performing. He simply moved through the room with a stillness that cut through all the noise in a way Reyes couldn't immediately explain. Their first real interaction lasted less than 4 minutes. Oren handed him a glass of scotch. Reyes asked a question, something careless, the way powerful men sometimes speak to people they've already decided don't matter. Oren didn't respond with words. He reached into his jacket pocket and wrote on a small notepad, then held it up. Reyes read it, laughed once. Genuine, unexpected, for the first time in months. And just like that, the night changed. What followed was unlike anything Reyes had experienced in 10 years of running an empire. They talked through handwritten notes and deliberate glances for nearly 2 hours. Not about power. Not about money. About small things. Observations. The kind of conversation that has no agenda and no outcome and somehow sticks with you longer than any negotiation ever does. That was the only night they had. Because the next morning Oren was gone. No explanation. No forwarding address. No contact through anyone Ray's quietly sent to look. Just gone. Ray's had written it off after a year. Told himself it meant nothing. That one quiet night with a mute hotel staffer had no business living this long in his memory. He'd mostly believed it. Until tonight. Because the child standing in the safe house bedroom had Oren's mouth. Oren's posture. And those same dark, steady eyes that didn't look away when they should have. Ray's stood in the doorway of the bedroom now, paper in hand, staring at the boy who hadn't moved. And the thing that was spreading through his chest wasn't confusion. It was recognition of a different kind. The kind that rearranges everything you thought was settled. The hotel was called the Verano Grand. 42 floors. Private event spaces on floors 12 through 15. The kind of building that had 2 sets of elevators, one for guests, one for staff, and made sure the 2 groups never crossed paths unless someone planned it. Oren Solis was 22 years old that night. He'd been working event staff contracts for 3 years by then. It was reliable work. Clean. Predictable enough that he could plan his days around it. The job required no speaking. Just presence, precision, and the ability to read a room and respond before anyone had to ask twice. He was good at that. Reading rooms. Reading people. The event on the 14th floor that evening was coded on the work schedule as a private corporate gathering. NDAs signed at intake. Phone confiscated at the elevator. Assigned positions for each staff member that did not overlap unless directed. Oren's station was the East Corridor bar. He'd been briefed by the shift supervisor in under 2 minutes. Keep the glasses full. Don't make eye contact. Don't engage unless engaged. Move efficiently and stay invisible. He'd done it 100 times before. What he hadn't counted on was the man who walked up to his station at 9:47 and ordered scotch, neat, no ice, and then made the mistake that most people made with Oren. He kept talking, without waiting for a response. You hear about the situation on the port? The man said, not really asking, the way powerful people sometimes speak at the room rather than to anyone in it. Oren poured the drink. Set it down precisely. Said nothing. The man paused. Looked at him properly for the first time. You ignoring me? Oren reached for his notepad. Wrote 4 words. Turned the pad forward. I can't speak. Sorry. A long pause. Then the man, Ray's Calder, though Oren didn't know that name yet, leaned back slightly. The hard edge in his expression didn't exactly soften. It just shifted, like a door that had been locked a long time and someone finally tried a different key. Ray said. He picked up his glass. Didn't walk away. That was the first surprise. The second was what happened next. Instead of the pity face Oren had been getting his entire life, or the loud, over-enunciated speaking that people defaulted to when they realized he was mute. Ray's pulled a pen from his jacket pocket. Borrowed the notepad. Wrote something back. That's the first honest response I've gotten tonight. Oren read it. Looked up. Ray's was watching him with something that wasn't quite a smile but wasn't far from one either. They went back and forth like that for 2 hours. The notepad filled up. They started a second one. The conversation moved the way good conversations do, without a plan, without performance, landing in places neither of them expected. Ray's wrote about silence like he understood what it cost. Oren wrote about watching people like he'd been studying them his whole life because it was the only tool he had. At one point Ray's wrote, most people talk to fill space. You don't need to. That's rare. Oren had held that sentence for a long time before writing back. Most people don't notice. By midnight, the event had wound down. The floor emptied. Oren's shift supervisor waved him off with a nod. He should have left. He knew that. He stayed another 40 minutes anyway. And when he finally walked toward the staff elevator, Ray's caught up to him at the hallway corner. Said nothing out loud. Just held eye contact for a moment. Then he wrote one last note on a business card. Handed it over. Oren read it in the elevator. I'd like to see you again. He read it 4 more times on the subway home. He was still holding it when he fell asleep. But the next morning he woke up at 5, and something cold and clear moved through him. The way it always did when something good got too close. He packed the notepad, Left before the city woke up. Left a single note at the front desk addressed to the name on the business card. Thank you for treating me like a person. He told himself it was the right call. He almost believed it, right up until the morning 2 months later when the test came back positive. And Oren sat on the bathroom floor of a small apartment in a city where nobody knew his name, and understood that leaving had not been the ending he thought it was. The word that kept coming back was leverage. Oren had spent enough time around power to understand how it worked. He wasn't naive. He hadn't been naive in a long time. And what he knew, what he understood down to the bone, was that a pregnant Omega carrying the child of a Calder triplet wasn't a love story. It was a liability, not to raise, maybe not even to the syndicate at first, but to everyone else in the world that orbited men like Ray's Calder, the rivals, the enemies, the power-hungry people who spent their lives looking for pressure points. A child was the cleanest leverage there was. Children didn't need to be touched to be used. They just needed to be known about. Oren had made his decision in stages. First, he left the city. Quietly. No notice to anyone. He had no family to explain himself to. No landlord on a long lease. No job that required more than a week's notice. He liquidated what little he had, packed 2 bags, and took a bus north. He found Northfall Ridge on accident. Stopped there because the engine on the connecting bus overheated, and while he waited, he walked down the main street and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Nothing. Not silence. Not emptiness. Just nothing pressing down on him. The town was small enough that strangers got noticed but not interrogated. The lake sat at the far edge of town like it was minding its own business. There was a diner, a hardware store, a school that looked like it had been built in 1987 and kept clean out of pride. Oren rented a small house 3 blocks from the water. He found remote transcription work. He waited. Cairo Solis was born on a Tuesday in late October. Healthy. Loud. Which surprised Oren, who had spent his whole life in quiet. Loud in the way newborns are loud when they arrive fully committed to being alive. Oren held him for the first hour without moving. Just held him. Cairo grew fast. Ate well. Slept in short bursts and then woke up alert, like he was always trying to catch up to something. By 18 months, he was already communicating in sign language. Not because Oren pushed it, but because Cairo watched his father's hands and decided that was a language worth learning. By 3 years old, he was reading. Not simple books. Real sentences. He would sit at the kitchen table with a library book and move through it steadily, occasionally stopping to write a question in the small notebook Oren had given him. He asked about a lot of things. He asked about his father starting at age 4. Oren had prepared for that question. He answered carefully. Honestly but carefully. He said the boy's father was a complicated man. That he lived far away. That the world around him was dangerous in ways that weren't his fault but also weren't safe. Cairo absorbed all of it. Wrote it in his notebook. Asked follow-up questions like a small attorney. Then one afternoon Cairo found a photograph Oren had kept at the bottom of a desk drawer. Not a romantic photo, just a printed image from an old news article. A shot of 3 men outside a federal courthouse. Names listed in a caption below. Cairo looked at it for a long time. Then he looked up at Oren and wrote, "Is this him?" Oren said nothing, which was, for Cairo, an answer. The boy studied the photograph for another minute. Then he wrote something that stopped Oren's heart completely. Flipped the notebook around. For words. "I think he's looking for us." Oren took the notebook slowly. Set it down. Signed back. "Why do you think that?" Cairo was quiet for a moment. Then he went to his room. Came back with a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it on the table. It was a printed article. Recent. About a Calder syndicate expansion into the Northern Trade Corridor. The article named a new base of operations. 40 miles from Northfall Ridge. Oren looked at his son. Cairo looked back. And neither of them said a word. Cairo Solis was 5 years old. He understood 3 things about himself that other kids his age did not. First, he could hear a conversation through a closed door from 15 feet away if the room was quiet enough. Second, He could tell when an adult was lying before the sentence finished. Third, his father was Ray's Calder. The third thing was the one he thought about most. He'd been researching the Calder Syndicate for 4 months. Not in the way kids research things. Randomly, impatiently, losing focus after 2 minutes. Cairo researched the way his father Oren had taught him to research anything. Start with what you know. Write the questions down. Find the gaps. Go back. He had a notebook dedicated to it. 3 pages of timeline. 2 pages of names. 1 page labeled simply, "What kind of man is he?" That last page was mostly blank. News articles didn't answer that question. They described what Ray's Calder did. They described his reach, his associates, the federal investigations that never quite closed the gap. They described a man who moved through the world without leaving clean edges. But they didn't describe what he was like in a room. What he was like with someone smaller than him. Whether he was the kind of person who hurt people because he wanted to or because he'd learned that was the only thing that kept the world from hurting him first. Cairo needed to know. And the only way to know was to see for himself. The news that Ray's Calder was using a safe house 40 miles from Northfall Ridge reached Cairo through the same way most information reached him. By listening carefully to conversations adults had when they thought no one was paying attention. 2 men at the diner. Talking about local property. Talking about the kind of traffic that had been moving through the county road at night. Cairo wrote down everything he heard. Cross-referenced it with what he already knew. And came to a conclusion. He told Oren nothing. That part bothered him. Oren trusted him completely. That trust was the most important thing in his world. Breaking it, even quietly, even temporarily, felt like a weight he'd have to carry. But Cairo also knew that if he told Oren what he was planning, Oren would stop him. Gently, carefully, with the kind of soft-handed logic that was hard to argue with. And Cairo didn't have time to argue. He had a question that needed an answer. He planned for 9 days. He mapped the county road. He identified the service entrance of the safe house property through satellite images he pulled on the library computer. He noted shift rotations. Based on the pattern of headlights, he tracked from the tree line behind the property 3 nights in a row after Oren fell asleep. He packed light, notebook, 2 pens, a small recording device he'd bought at a second-hand shop for $4. The yellow rubber gloves Oren kept under the kitchen sink. Oversized, but they were the only ones he could find. On the 9th night, he left a note on Oren's pillow. Simple. "I'll be home before morning." He slipped out the back. The walk took just under 2 hours. The service entrance was exactly where he'd marked it on his mental map. The latch was partially disengaged, consistent with what he'd observed on his second reconnaissance night. He moved inside, down the hall, past 2 guards who were focused on the front perimeter, into the room at the end of the east corridor. He stopped in the doorway. The man on the bed was large, still, breathing with the kind of deliberate evenness that Cairo immediately recognized for what it was. Not sleep, performance. Cairo almost smiled. He already knew this part would happen. Oren had told him, not as a warning but as a fact, the same way Oren always shared difficult truths. If your father is still the man I knew, he will test before he trusts. Cairo pulled on his gloves, stepped into the room. He was not there to meet his father. He was there to decide whether his father deserved to be met. And he was starting the test right now. Here are chapters 6 through 10, continuing directly from where the story left off. Cairo moved like he had a checklist in his head. Because he did. Rays watched through barely open lids as the boy turned slowly and began a quiet, methodical inspection of the room. Not frantic. Not rushed. Deliberate. The way a person moves when they've already decided what they're looking for and just need to confirm it's there. The boy checked the door first. Both hinges. The lock plate. The gap between the door and the frame. Then the window. He pressed 2 gloved fingers against the corner of the glass. Testing the seal. Checking whether it had been recently opened. Rays processed this in real time. This child was mapping the room's exits. 5 years old. Mapping exits. Rays kept his breathing slow. kept his body heavy against the mattress. He'd played dead in worse situations than this, in rooms with guns drawn and men who meant it. A child with rubber gloves and a notebook shouldn't have been the hardest audience he'd ever performed stillness for. But it was, because the boy was good. Cairo moved to the nightstand next. The stacks of cash didn't make him reach, didn't make his eyes go wide. He looked at them the way an adult would. Like money was a fact about a person, not an invitation. He counted the stacks without touching them, mouthed numbers silently. Then he wrote something in his notebook. Ray's couldn't see the page from this angle. Then the boy reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out the small recording device. Ray's clocked it immediately. Old model. Second-hand by the look of the casing. The boy held it carefully, both hands like it was something that mattered. He set it on the nightstand beside the money. Pressed play. A voice came out of the speaker. Not a live voice. A speech device recording, the kind generated by a text-to-voice system. Flat in tone but precise in language. And even through the mechanical delivery, Ray's heard the sentence structure. The word choices. He knew that mind. He'd spent 2 hours writing notes back and forth with it 6 years ago. The recording said, "If you're hearing this, it means Cairo found you." Ray's chest locked. He didn't move. The recording continued. "He's been planning this for 9 days. I didn't know until tonight." Pause in the audio. Intentional. Like Oren had stopped speaking and then started again. "He's not there to scare you. He's not there to hurt anything. He just needed to know something I couldn't answer for him." Cairo stood beside the nightstand, watching the recording play, not watching Ray's, which meant he already knew Ray's was listening. The recording kept going. "I taught him that real people show themselves in unguarded moments. He wanted to see yours." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "If he trusts you, he'll wake you." The recording clicked off. Cairo reached over and picked it up, slipped it back into his pocket. Then he turned to face the bed fully, and waited. Ray's lay still for 4 more seconds. Not because he needed to, but because something about the moment required it. Like standing at the edge of a door you can't walk back through once you open it. Then he opened his eyes. All the way, the room held. Cairo didn't flinch, didn't step back. He stood at the bedside in those oversized yellow gloves and looked at Ray's the way a person looks at someone they've been studying from a distance for a long time and are finally seeing up close. Ray's sat up slowly. They watched each other. The lamp between them threw warm light across the boy's face, and Ray's saw it clearly now. The jaw, the brow line, the particular way the boy held his mouth when he was thinking. All of it pulled from Oren like a copy made by someone who paid close attention. Except the eyes. The eyes were different. The eyes were his. Cairo reached for his notebook, opened it, wrote something slowly, turned the page around. "Are you dangerous?" Ray's read it twice. He understood immediately that the boy wasn't asking about himself. Cairo wasn't worried about what Ray's might do to him. He was asking something else entirely. Ray's didn't answer right away. He sat on the edge of the bed, looked at the question, looked at the boy. In 10 years of running the syndicate, no one had ever asked him that question the way Cairo was asking it now. People asked out of fear, or they asked rhetorically, already knowing the answer and just needing to confirm they were right to be afraid. Politicians, rivals, federal consultants, they all asked the same question with their hands already up. Cairo asked it like a scientist, calm, precise, waiting for data. Ray's set the notebook down on the bed between them. "Who are you asking about?" Cairo picked up his pen, wrote without hesitation. "Mama." Ray's exhaled once through his nose. There it was. Not, "Are you dangerous to me?" Not even, "Are you dangerous in general? Are you dangerous to Oren?" That was the question. That had been the question the entire time. From the moment Cairo oiled that door hinge, through the reconnaissance nights in the tree line, through 9 days of planning with a $4 recording device and a notebook. A 5-year-old had walked into a mafia safe house to find out whether his father was safe enough to bring home. Ray stood. Cairo tracked the movement. Ray's walked to the window. The rain was lighter now, coming down at an angle. The property outside was dark past the first tree line. His security lights didn't reach that far. He stared out for a moment, not seeing much. Then he said, quietly, "How long has Oren been outside?" Cairo wrote, "Since I went in." Ray's turned. "He followed you?" Cairo considered that, then wrote, "He let me go first." Ray's stood with that for a second. Let me go first. Not followed you. Not didn't know. Oren had let the boy walk in ahead of him, knowing where Cairo was going, knowing what he was walking into. That wasn't recklessness. That was trust. Oren trusted this child's judgment enough to let him lead. Ray's moved back toward the bed, sat down again across from Cairo. The boy hadn't moved, still standing, still steady. "Sit down," Ray said. Cairo looked at the bed, looked at Ray's. Saturday. They were level now, close enough that Ray's could see the details that hadn't been clear from across the room. A small scar on Cairo's left knuckle, the kind you get from falling on pavement. An ink mark on his right index finger from pressing too hard on his pen. A faint crease between his brows that appeared when he was working through something. Ray's recognized that crease. He'd seen it in mirrors. "How old are you?" Ray's asked. Cairo held up 5 fingers, then wrote, 5 and 8 months. The precision made Ray's almost want to smile. Almost. "You came here alone." Not a question. Cairo wrote, "I planned for 9 days." "I know," Ray said. "I saw the marks on the east fence." Cairo's eyes shifted slightly, not embarrassed, recalculating, filing the information away for next time. Ray's leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You knew I was awake." Cairo nodded once. "When did you know?" The boy wrote slowly this time, turned the notebook. "When you didn't move when I pressed your chest. Most sleeping people shift a little. You didn't shift at all. You were holding still on purpose." Ray's read it. Read it again. "And you kept going anyway." Cairo wrote, "That was the point. I needed to see what you did when you thought nobody was watching." Ray's sat back. The room was quiet except for the rain. He looked at the boy for a long moment. This child who'd mapped exits and tracked headlight rotations and packed a recording device and walked 2 hours in the dark and stood in the doorway of a room belonging to one of the most dangerous men on the eastern seaboard, and hadn't been scared. Or if he had been scared, had done it anyway. Which was something different. Which was something harder. Ray's stood up. "Stay here," he said. Cairo wrote immediately, "Where are you going?" Ray's looked at the notebook page. "To find your mother." Cairo studied his face. Long pause. Then he wrote one more thing. Turned the notebook slowly. "He's near the east fence. By the second oak tree. He's been standing there since I went in." Ray's looked at that for a moment. Then he walked out. The east fence was 140 yards from the back door. Ray's crossed the property alone. No jacket. Rain still coming down at that low angle. He told his security team to stand down via earpiece without explaining why, just 2 words. Stand down, and they did because that was the kind of authority that didn't get questioned. The second oak tree was easy to find. He saw the shape before he reached it, standing very still between the fence and the tree line. Back straight, hands at the sides, not hiding, not advancing. Just standing there in the rain like someone who had decided to be present and committed to it regardless of the weather. Ray's stopped 10 feet away. Oren Solis turned to face him. 5 years. 5 years older, and the recognition still hit like something physical. Oren was leaner than Ray's remembered. More defined not from vanity, from necessity. A life of raising a child alone, working remotely, living carefully. His eyes were the same. Still and dark and reading everything the way they always had. He was holding a small notepad. Already had something written on it. He held it up. "I know what you want to say." Ray's looked at the words. Looked at Oren. "Then you know this isn't just a conversation," Ray said. Oren turned the page. "I know. You disappeared," Ray said. The word came out flat. Not accusatory, just factual. The way Reyes had learned to say hard things. Stripped of the emotion underneath, at least on the surface. Oren wrote, "Turned it. You were building an empire. I was a one-night conversation in a hotel corridor. I didn't think I had the right to complicate your life." Reyes stared at that. "You didn't think you had the right." Oren held eye contact. "Didn't write anything else." "You had his eyes," Reyes said. "From the beginning, that child had my eyes. You knew what that meant." Oren wrote slowly this time. The rain made the paper go soft at the edges. "I knew exactly what it meant. That's why I left. Your enemies would have found him. Used him. You know that's true." Reyes did know. That was the part that made this hard. That was the thing he couldn't argue past because Oren wasn't wrong. The Calder Syndicate had enemies with patience and resources and the specific kind of cruelty that targeted children precisely because it worked. 3 years ago, Kaysen's partner had needed a full security detail for 6 months because of a single leaked address. A leaked address. That was all it took. "You could have told me," Reyes said. Oren wrote, "Would you have let me leave?" Reyes didn't answer. Oren wrote again. "That's why I didn't tell you." They stood in the rain. Reyes ran a hand across the back of his neck. A habit. The one physical thing he did when something inside him was moving too fast for words. "He tested me," Reyes said. Oren almost smiled. Wrote, "He tests everyone. He tested his first grade teacher on day 1. Pretended he couldn't read to see if she'd give up on him." Reyes looked back toward the house. The light from the east corridor window was visible from here. "He's something," Reyes said. "And he didn't mean it the way people say it casually. He meant it the way you say something when you've run out of a bigger word." Oren wrote, turned the page. Reyes read it. And the guilt that had been sitting at the back of his chest all night broke through completely. "I know you would have protected us. That's not why I left. I left because I was afraid of wanting you to. And I didn't think I was allowed to need something that much." Reyes stood there with that sentence for a long time. The rain came down. Neither of them moved. Then Reyes said, "Where are you staying?" Oren wrote an address. Reyes memorized it. "Is Cairo safe in the house right now?" Oren nodded. "Good," Reyes said. He looked at Oren directly. Not soft. Not hard. Just honest. The same way it had been 6 years ago in a hotel corridor over a borrowed notepad. "I need to know something," Reyes said. Oren waited. "Are you still afraid of me?" Oren looked at him for a long moment, then wrote, turned the page slowly. And what it said made Reyes realize this conversation wasn't ending tonight. It was starting. Oren's answer was 4 words. "Not the way before." Reyes read it standing in the rain, 10 feet from the east fence, and understood what it meant without needing to ask. Before, that was the fear of being close to something dangerous, of loving someone whose world destroyed the people around him. That fear hadn't disappeared. It had changed shape, grown more specific, more honest about what it was actually protecting. That matters, because a person who tells you their fear precisely is not running from it. They're negotiating with it. Reyes said nothing, just nodded once. They walked back to the safe house together. Not side by side. A few feet of distance between them, the kind that acknowledges a gap without surrendering to it. Oren's shoes were soaked through. He'd been standing in the rain for close to an hour and hadn't gone back to the tree line once. That said something too. Cairo was exactly where Reyes had left him, sitting on the edge of the bed, notebook on his lap. When he saw his mother come through the door, something shifted in his face. Not relief exactly, but a release of tension so immediate it was like watching a room depressurize. His shoulders dropped half an inch. His jaw unclenched. He'd been holding that the whole time. Oren crossed the room and crouched in front of him. Signed something with his hands. Cairo signed back. A short exchange. Quick. The kind of conversation that had been happening in that house for 5 years without any words at all. Built from necessity and turned into fluency. Then Cairo looked at Reyes, picked up his pen, wrote, held up the notebook. "Did you pass?" Ray's looked at the question. Looked at the boy. What was I being tested on? Cairo wrote, whether you'd come outside on your own, or make someone bring him in. Ray's processed that. The boy had built a test with two outcomes. If Ray's had sent a guard to retrieve whoever was outside, efficient, impersonal, the way you handle an unknown variable, that was one answer. If Ray's went himself in the rain alone, that was a different answer. Cairo had designed the whole thing around one variable. What does this man do when the choice costs him something small? Ray's pulled the chair from the corner of the room and set it down in front of the bed. He sat, brought himself to eye level. What did I score? He asked. Cairo considered this seriously. Wrote, still deciding. Ray's almost smiled. Oren sat beside Cairo on the bed. The three of them in a room together for the first time. There was nothing ceremonial about it. No music. No dramatic light. Just a rain-soaked night in a safe house with a lamp too warm for the hour and money stacked on a nightstand that suddenly felt very out of place. Ray's looked at Oren. I need to talk to you, he said. Not tonight. Tonight we get you both dry and somewhere safe. But I need to talk to you properly. Oren wrote, I know. There are things that have to change, Ray said. Things I have to change. Oren looked at him steadily. Wrote, I'm not asking you to change. I know you're not, Ray said. That's not why I'm saying it. A pause. I'm saying it because I want to. Oren held that. For a long moment he just held it, the way a person holds something that weighs more than it looks. Then Cairo, who had been watching this entire exchange with the focus of a child who understood far more than adults assumed, reached over and wrote something on a fresh page. He tore it out, handed it to Ray's. Mama cried once when he thought I was asleep. He was looking at your picture. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say yet. Ray's held the paper. Didn't speak. Oren reached over and signed to Cairo one sharp, brief motion. Cairo signed back completely unbothered. Ray's looked at both of them. What did he say? Oren wrote, and this time the pause before he turned the page was longer than any that had come before. He said, now you know. Morning came in quietly. No announcement. No alarm. Just gray light pressing through the gap in the curtains until the room shifted from amber to pale, and the rain slowed to nothing, and somewhere outside a bird started up before everything else did. Cairo had fallen asleep in the chair. At some point in the night, someone had draped a jacket over him. Ray's jacket, the one that had been on the back of the corner chair. Cairo hadn't stirred. He slept the way children sleep after they've done something that cost them real effort. Deep, still, like the body is collecting on a debt. Oren sat on the far end of the bed. Awake. Had been for a while by the look of it. Ray's sat in the other chair across the room. Neither of them had slept much. They'd talked. Through written pages and careful pauses, until sometime past 3 in the morning. Not all of it easy. Most of it wasn't. But none of it dishonest. That was the difference between this conversation and every other one Ray's had navigated in the past decade. Nobody was managing information. Nobody was protecting a position. It was just two people working through something real. At one point Ray's had asked Oren directly, what do you want? Oren had written for a full minute. Not a short answer. I want Cairo to grow up knowing his father is a real person. Not a headline. Not a fear. A person who chose to show up when it costs something. I want him to have a reference point for what an alpha looks like when he decides that love is a verb. Ray's had read that 3 times. Then he said, and what do you want for yourself? Oren had looked at the wall for a moment. Then written, I want to stop making decisions based on what I think I'm allowed to need. Now morning light filled the room. Cairo stirred, blinked twice, looked at Ray's first, not Oren, which was notable, and studied him the way he'd been studying him since the moment he walked in. Assembling a conclusion. Ray's met the look directly. Morning, he said. Cairo reached for his notebook. The pen was still in his hand from falling asleep. He wrote without sitting fully upright. Held the notebook up. Have you decided? Ray's looked at the question. Decided what? Cairo wrote again. Whether we're worth the change. The room was completely quiet. Oren didn't look at Ray's. He looked at the floor. The question was Cairo's, but the answer mattered to both of them in ways that bent differently for each. The child needed a father who was present. The man who'd loved quietly and alone for 5 years needed something harder to name. Ray stood. He crossed the room. He did not sit down. He knelt. Eye level with the boy in the chair. Ray's Calder. Alpha King, syndicate engine, the man who ran corridors that made federal agents lose sleep, on one knee in a rain-soaked safe house at 6 in the morning, looking directly at a 5-year-old in a too-big jacket. I've already decided, Ray said. Cairo studied his face. Not rushing, taking his time. Then the boy picked up his pen one more time. He wrote slowly, pressing hard the way he always did when the words mattered. He tore the page from the notebook, placed it in Ray's hand. Ray's looked down and read it. Mama says alphas prove love with actions. Ray's folded the page once, put it in his shirt pocket. Then that's what I'll do, he said. Cairo watched him for a long moment. Then he closed the notebook. And for the first time since he'd walked into that room wearing yellow rubber gloves in the middle of the night, he smiled. Small. Real. The kind of smile a child gives when they've been holding their breath and finally decide it's safe to breathe. Oren looked up from across the room. His eyes met Ray's. No notebook. No writing. Just a look that said everything that had needed saying for 5 years. Ray's held it. And for the first time in longer than he could name, he felt something settle inside him. Not the quiet of an empty room. The quiet of a room with people in it. People who chose to stay. If the story moved something in you, if you felt even one moment of that, you already know what it's about. It's about the choices we make when fear is louder than love. And the rare moments when someone chooses anyway. Drop a comment below and tell me, who in your life took a risk to show up for you? Who proved love with action when they didn't have to? Your story matters. Share it. Someone else needs to read it today. And if you want more stories that cut this deep, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every story on this channel is built to stay with you. This one won't be the last.